So welcome everybody to the State of the Library. I am Andrew Mangels, I'm the Library Director, and I have been the Library Director for over 18 years now here at Porter Library, so I'm starting to get the hang of it and figure a few things out. We did this for a number of years and then kind of stopped for a couple years. Welcome, come on in. Yeah, welcome.
Hi.
Got a few chairs in the back, a few up front, wherever you'd like. Yeah. We took a few years off. We weren't getting a lot of traction, and then a year or two ago, we decided, well, it was too important not to do to have this. It fits into the transparency, at least giving the opportunity for people to come up and hear about their public library. And it also coincided with a couple years ago getting a new PR marketing manager, Heather Finati, who is here with us. And Heather has done an amazing job for the library and also did a lot of work making this presentation ready for you all to see. So thank you, Heather. Appreciate it. So we're going to dive right in, and we're going to, I guess I would call it the boring stuff only because it's numbers, and if you like, numbers can be interesting or not interesting. But 24, by the numbers. Not everybody is necessarily aware of how busy this library really is, right? I mean, in this day and age, you still from time to time hear people say things like, oh, library, do people still go to the library? People do still go to the library. In 2024, we had almost 290,000 visits to the library. Almost 300,000 visits to the library. That's an amazing amount. So when you look at library statistics from around the country, we are far and away busier than most libraries that you would encounter anywhere else, especially for our size. We check out about, when we say we check out about 1 million items, that also includes renewals, but it's indicative of the amount of use that things are getting. To me, one of the most important statistics that we have, and we'll talk a little bit about it as we go through the program, is this number right here, program attendance. So 37,000 visits to one of our meeting rooms over the course of a year. So we have all of these meeting rooms downstairs. We'll talk about upstairs again in a little bit, but that is a library program or maybe a group that's hosting a program all through the year. That is a lot of people to come to the library for a program. When you look at our circulation, we talked about our circulation being this high, almost 200,000 of that is digital materials. We're definitely, I don't think this should be a surprise to anybody, we are seeing that increase and decrease, a little bit of a decrease in print materials, not a ton, but a little bit, and especially the AV, so DVDs, music CDs, things like that for obvious reasons of streaming, but the digital continues to go up. We'll talk about why that's actually kind of a big problem for us as we move forward. Other really important things that people may or may not know about their public library. One of the other things that we do here besides doing programs in our meeting rooms is that we have these public meetings. So there's 1,500 public meetings. And by a public meeting, we don't allow businesses to use our meeting rooms for business purposes. It's mostly nonprofits that are, or community groups that are going to be using our meeting rooms. So the people who are using our public meetings, almost every homeowners association in Westlake uses our meeting rooms for their meetings. Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Kiwanis, Rotary, Town Criers. Our Town Criers don't meet here. What am I thinking? Oh, Toastmasters. Toastmasters is a speech club. They meet here regularly. One of the things I'm really excited about, going way back when I first started here, we used to host the English as a second language classes at the library, and then they stopped meeting here because they went to Tri-C, and that's where they held all their classes. They have now come back, and they're meeting here on a regular basis, teaching ESOL, so we're very excited about that. The public meetings. We also issue passports at the library, which we do big business in passports. We are required to charge money for passports. We couldn't do it for free even if we wanted to. We're required to charge a fee, and so that actually makes us a lot of money, but it's also very helpful because previous to that, you could only get your passport across the street at the post office, and they have very limited hours and things like that. We do passports every day, almost all day, it feels like. And then we still answer questions. This is a big one. I remember I'm so old. When I had my library degree before the internet, and I remember when the internet came along and everybody said, well, it's going to put the library out of business. It really didn't put us out of business. Obviously, we're still here, changed a little bit of what we do, but we still get a tremendous amount of questions for any number of reasons. The first, if you Google something and you get a million results and you're trying to figure out, is this credible, not credible? Plus, there's all kinds of other questions that people ask us. These are by the numbers, how busy your public library is. So we have to talk about another set of numbers, because all of that activity that happens here, it does cost. I hear a lot, people talk about the library being free, and it's very, very important to remember the library is not free. People pay for it with their tax dollars. You comes in, might feel like it's free, you get to come in, grab books and walk out, but those were paid for with taxpayer dollars, and we never ever forget that. It's not up at the moment, but this used to be exclusively the library board room where they met, and there was a quote on this wall from a previous board member that was, he said, would always say to myself and my fiscal officer, sharpen your pencil, every meeting, sharpen your pencil. And then he'd say, are you telling your vendors to sharpen their pencil? Everybody had to sharpen their pencil, and we still live by that quote, where we try to be very responsible with the money that we're given. So what does our revenue look like? How the library is funded. Let me back up a minute and just let folks who may or may not know, because a common question we get is, are you a part of county, or why aren't you a part of county, and so forth. The term for us is we are an independent library. There are 9 independent library systems in Cuyahoga County. You have city and county that are independent, and then you have on the west side, Lakewood, Rocky River, and Westlake. On the east side, you have Euclid, Cleveland Heights, University Heights, Shaker Heights, and East Cleveland. So the independent libraries, like us, means that we report to a 7-member board, many of my board members who are here today, and we are not part of county. Now, when we talk about the property tax and so forth, our millage, which is not going to be any one of these slides, our millage is technically right now lower than county's millage. So for us to be part of county library, it would cost more. Now, not significantly more, because their millage, I believe, is 3.45 and ours is 3.4. It's still lower, but that means if we join county, we would actually pay a higher mill rate. But we are independent, and as part of being independent, we are primarily supported with local tax dollars. So we have the levy that's a 3.4 mil levy that is generating, and we just increased that to 3.4 from 2.8. Prior to that, we had not asked the community for additional money for over 15 years. And with this new levy going up to 3.4, it is our hopeful goal that we can go another 15 years without having to ask for an increase. So the local property tax is bringing in a little over $5 million, which is 75% of the funding. But because Ohio is a unique state, every library that is in Ohio, and there are 251 libraries throughout the state of Ohio, and that includes, like, county is one library, Cincinnati Hamilton is one library, Westlake is one library. There's 251 libraries, and all of us get some form of state funding. For us, it is about 20% of our budget at 1.4 million. That's about what it was in 2006. 6 and 7 was our high water mark, and then in 2008-9, especially when the economy crashed, we lost over almost $500,000 in state funding, and it took until just a couple of years ago for that to build back up to what we were getting from the state back in 2006. But that's important money. The other thing about state funding that's important for people to realize, and a lot of people don't realize this, in Ohio, you can go into any library in Ohio and use that library. Get a library card in any library in Ohio. That is not true in a lot of places around the country. So where I'm from, in Missouri, if you, St. Louis County, for example, if you don't live in St. Louis County, you can't get a St. Louis County library card unless you write a sizable check to, pay what the equivalent of a tax bill would be. And a lot of libraries do that. They'll say, well, if you don't live in our taxing district, you can pay us to be here. But in Ohio, because everybody's getting state funding, then anybody can get a library card or use a library. And then we have our other category, the $340,000, which doesn't make up a lot. of the budget, but that is going to be things like passport revenue is actually huge for us. We are allowed, the public library is allowed to make investments, very restricted. Public funds can only be invested in certain ways. So some of our money can be invested when we're not using it, and that does generate interest. So between interest and maybe a few grants here and there, and the passport money, we get about $344,000 from that. So our budget is going to be roughly $6.9 million. And that is assuming that the property tax holds firm, meaning that people in Westlake pay their taxes at about a 97% collection rate, which is typical, and that the state funding is not cut. And right now, let me finish this thought and then I'll take questions on that. Our state money is decided every 2 years as part of the biennium budget. And we are, the way libraries get money from the state is it's a percentage of the entire general revenue fund of the state of Ohio. So whatever the budget is, libraries get about 1.7%. And what that means is that 1.7% of the general revenue fund gets divided into 88 counties. And then at each county level, whatever share is broken up with the libraries that are in there. So that's kind of it gets very complicated from there. But what's important is that as the new biennium budget is coming up, and a new budget will be in place by July this year, that we want to ensure that libraries are included in that budget and that we're included at a rate that at least maintains the amount we're getting. So,
yeah, just quickly, I assume that the library is 501c3.
We're not. We're what's called a political subdivision of the state, and we don't have a 501 designation. It's and I can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember what the IRS. But we are we're not a state agency. So when you like ODOT or Department of Transportation or ODNR, we are not a division of state government, but we are a political subdivision of the state. So
do you get individual donations from the public?
We do, and that would be included in the other.
Yeah.
It's not a tremendous amount. What we really try and do is steer donations that would go to the library to our foundation, so that our foundation can build up and support the library. But sometimes people want to donate directly to the library.
And you don't get grants from anybody?
We do. We just sometimes they're for specific things. We just recently got a $10,000 grant from the Cuyahoga County Board of Developmental Disability to buy a industrial or sort of heavy duty changing table for adults with disabilities, which is kind of a thing in libraries now to be more accessible. So we got a $10,000 grant for that. We have gotten other grants anywhere from a couple $1,000s, usually not huge grants.
Not from corporations?
Typically not. I mean, we could, but we typically don't. Yeah. And then Sylvia, and then, yeah. Okay, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Okay, about state funding, you said the library as a whole gets 1.7% of the state budget, right? Is that enshrined in the state constitution?
No, it's just part of the budget process, and there's kind of two ways that some organizations can get money from the state budget. One is to be a line item where you're actually listed as a specific line item. The other way is to get a percentage of the budget, and being a line item is more common. Libraries it was set up a long time ago to get a percentage of the overall budget. So it's not in the Constitution, and in fact, the number that I said, 1.7, has been all over the map over the years, and it's voted on each time with each budget.
Yeah, I heard about this, and I heard somewhere that this is kind of unique in Ohio. Not every state has this state support of public libraries.
Correct.
Is that true?
It's extremely true. The only other library system in which the state funds all of the libraries is Hawaii, but it's also very small. There isn't really anything quite like this. There's other states that fund their libraries fairly well. I think New York does a nice job of funding their libraries, Indiana. There's a handful of states that do, but for the most part, you don't get state funding. So when I was in Kansas, for example, and the other thing is the type of libraries. You don't see too many libraries in Ohio that are a department of a city, for example. Like, we're not associated with the city of Westlake. we're great partners, but the city of Westlake doesn't have oversight, where that would be the case in a lot of small town libraries around the country. And so they're reliant on city government to fund them or not fund them. So Ohio, and did not get really wonky, but and how times have changed. When I started almost 20 years ago, 75% of the libraries in Ohio were funded only by state dollars. They didn't have a local levy at all. 75%. There were 25% of libraries that had state funding and a levy, and we were in that group. And then out of that little group, most of those, it was still mostly state money, and then there was a handful of libraries like us that we have always gotten very little state money and have relied more heavily on local. And there's a whole big history of why that is. And many fights have been had over the years as to how to share that money.
Thank you.
Sylvia, did you have a question?
Yeah, you explained a lot, because my questions were about the state funding as well. And I, had no concept of the criteria of what we needed to do to get more funding. Is there something we can do to drive that number?
From the state? Not particularly. What we'll do is this spring we will go down on legislative day and we will talk with our legislators. Certainly will be the Ohio Library Council, which is the lobbying arm for libraries, right? It is a separate nonprofit, but it's a 501c4. They're the professional association and they lobby on behalf of libraries for this funding. When in the governor's budget, libraries would like to see that number probably at 2%, not 1.75, but the governor is starting at 1.75, and we'll have to see what the House and Senate do with that. If the House and Senate say, no, we're only giving libraries 1.5, then we would probably mobilize our constituency and say, hey, they're going to cut libraries, which is what happened in it was 2009 when Governor Strickland came out and tried to cut libraries by 30%, and library constituency blew up the State House with calls and emails and in-person things, and there had to be cuts, right? There was an economic crisis going on, but libraries only wound up taking a 15% hit because of action. But right now it's playing out. Down at State House, they understand the importance of libraries, and I think that we just need to wait and see.
So it really has nothing to do with circulation or anything like that?
No, not really.
Okay.
No. Once the money hits Cuyahoga County, and it has to be divided between the 9 libraries, every single county has a different formula on who gets how much, right? And some counties will say, well, we have higher CERC, so we get more. With the libraries in Cuyahoga County, it's a percentage that was worked out years and years ago, and we're at a point now where to try and as a former library director of another library in Cuyahoga County said to me once, well, Andrew, whose ox are you going to gore? So in other words, for Westlake to get more of that state money, it would have to be taken away from one of the other 8 libraries in the county. And we have made that case over the last 30 years as to why we should actually have more of that money. And sometimes it's worked and sometimes it hasn't.
Well, I'm so heavily involved with Lakewood and Rocky River, obviously, because my father-in-law lived Rocky River. But I want to see their numbers as compared to ours.
They get even less than we do.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They weren't willing, historically, they didn't fight as hard as we did. There was a point, so this room is named after Tom A. Fox. Tom was on the board here for 30 years, and Tom led the church. So Westlake used to be, we all know, super little tiny, where a lot of the other communities were already bigger. So when the amounts were apportioned, the other communities were essentially already built out in the size they were, and Westlake was small, so we got a small amount. But then Westlake exploded in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, right? And mostly 80s. And as we got bigger, our share of the PLF, Public Library Fund, that's the acronym for the state money, it didn't grow. And so we were over here going, wait a minute, what about some of you people like Lakewood, I'm looking at you, they had 75,000 people, went to 50,000 people. Other communities were getting smaller, we were getting bigger, but there was no mechanism for changing those percentages. So we took it, when I say we, long before I was ever here, Tom Fox and company took it all the way to the Supreme Court. They were gonna rule on it, and then everybody sort of said, well, that's getting ridiculous, and they made a deal, and Westlake percentage changed. But that's the effort that you have to go through to change that formula. And for the most part, any change like that would be negligible in our budget, and it's probably not worth that fight. It's easier just to cooperate with the other libraries so that we are all using our money to serve the public. So that's on the revenue side. When we get to the expense side, and you look, salaries and benefits, a lot of people are surprised at how many staff members we have here. So we have about 85 people that work at the library. And that seems like a lot at first, but then the first thing I always point out is that we are open 70 hours a week. So we have to cover 70 hours a week of staffing. We have departments that are, if he wants to come in, we have departments that are not necessarily seen. So we have a building services department, we have a finance department, we have a technical service department, which is responsible for buying all the materials and getting them out there and so forth. And so there's a lot of staff members that you wouldn't see, and then the other factor is a lot of our staff are part-time people. So 85 sounds like a big number, but the reality is it's about 56 FTE to cover 70 hours of being open. So our salary and benefits, and out of that benefits pool, it's is probably no surprise to anybody, insurance is just a tough thing to negotiate the insurance costs. The one I want to spend probably the most time on here right now is this item right here. We spent about a little over $700,000 on materials. Now, when that was just books, we got a lot of bang for our buck, and it was easy to do. But now we have these e-materials, and from time to time, I get comments from the public that suggest that their taxes should be going down because electronic books are saving us tons of money. But in reality, electronic materials cost us more. And the reason is that the publishers don't want us to have any of it. If the publishers had their way, we wouldn't circulate books. They would not let libraries, they want to sell the stuff. And they lost the book thing 200 years ago. We've been able to, under US laws, circulate books, that's established. But when the e-materials started coming out, the publishers started to say, wait a minute, this isn't the same thing. And they have gotten away with putting a lot of restrictions on e-materials for us. And it's different for every publisher. So here's an example. Take a book on a downloadable audiobook. An unabridged, when it was on CD or back with the cassettes, we might have spent anywhere from $50 to $80 on that physical audio material. You would think it would be cheaper to have it electronically, but in fact, they charge us more than that. They might charge us $100 or $120. Why? Because they can, and they would rather not sell it to us at all. So then you think, well, so you buy it for $100. At least everybody can use it at the same time, right? Nope, they won't let us have simultaneous use. So what that means is that you buy this electronic copy that you can go to Libby and download and listen to it, but only one person at a time. You think, well, at least it lasts forever. You spend that $100 and you have that for the next 50 years, so you still get your money's worth. Oh, no. They figured out that if you buy a physical book, the average amount of times that book can check out before it basically falls apart or gets too nasty, that we might have to replace it, is about 26 times, right? So if we spent $20 on a book, it's on the shelf, it checks out 26, it could check out more than that, but after, say, 26 checkouts, then it falls apart and we want that book, we have to buy another one. That's all fair enough. Everybody can agree that that's probably fair enough. But an electronic one that doesn't wear out, and Heather, do you mind going and closing the admin door? It doesn't wear out, but what the publisher says is once it has checked out or been downloaded 26 times, we consider that all the use you get out of it, now you got to buy it again. So that's something that the publishers do to us that makes it very difficult to sustain. So that's one model. The other model is, there's another company that has Hoopla that has the model of you only pay for it if you download. So on Libby, We have purchased all of those, or I guess you'd almost call it leasing. We've leased or purchased all that stuff, and it's sitting there in our collection. Hoopla has this gigantic collection of everything that we don't own, but if you as a patron want to use it and you download it, we're only charged for that use. And that seems like a pretty good idea, right? Because the average price there is only $2. So the difference between buying something for $80 and having it check out, however many times, let's say it's a material that only one person ever really wanted it, and they download it for $2, we win. That's a great deal for us. But if it's very popular and it's $2 a download and it's downloaded 80 times, well, now all of a sudden, right, that's $160 on that one title. And so it gets very complicated, it gets very confusing. And what we have found is in the last year, more and more people are finding these electronic materials, so our electronic budget is skyrocketing. So, we're very quickly coming to a point of, how are we going to address the cost of materials to provide what people want? The most obvious way is, well, if electronic is going up, shouldn't your print collection, you take it out of the print collection, right? Well, we're not ready to do that because people are still using our print collection. We feel it's very, very important. There is the feeling in libraries that electronic materials are probably the future, and some libraries have started the transition to not having as many books physically in their library. They're trading for space and collaborative rooms and so forth versus those physical materials. We're not doing that. We believe firmly that people still want to hold materials, listen to materials, see materials that they can put their hands on, as well as the e-materials. So we're working through that. We're trying to find ways to be very smart about how we handle both collections. The other thing you also have to remember, $733,000 doesn't go very far when you take, and let's just, the most popular author right now, everybody knows John Grisham, right? And every time John Grisham releases something, people tend to want it. So right now, John Grisham releases a new book. We'll get multiple copies in regular print. Then we buy it in large print. Then we probably, at this point, would still buy it on physical CDs for audio. Then they make the movie, so we got to buy the movie. If we buy the movie, we get it on DVD and Blu-ray, and maybe even 4K. Then on the e-side, we're going to have the e-book itself. Then we're going to have the e-audio. And now one title we buy across 8 platforms. So far, we've been able to balance that, I think, very well with keeping a robust collection of things that back up again. We are known as, what we are known as is called a popular materials library. So we really only buy things that we think are going to be what most people want and circulate. We're not a research library, we're not a repository, we're not going to buy something that might sit on the shelf for 2 years hoping that somebody might need it someday. We don't have the space for that. So because of that, it's been manageable to do all of these formats with all these titles, but it's becoming tougher as more people catch on to the electronic materials. It doesn't drive our costs down, it actually drives it up a little bit. Some of the other costs that we have, the contracted services, are just what we do to keep the building open and running. And then you see this big $1.2 million transfer. One of the things that we do here at the library is we like to plan. This building is now 22 years old, and I would hope that you feel that when you walk in, this building looks like it is in top condition. We value this space, we want to make sure it looks nice, that it's up to date, and so forth. But it is a 77,000 square foot building on 8 acres of property. So in order to maintain that, and in order to pay for those things without having to come to the public every couple of years with, we need to increase our millage, we need to increase our millage. We forgot that we needed a new roof. We need to redo the parking lot, right? All of these, the HVAC system. What we do is we plan ahead how much money we're going to need. We have a big chart of every possible improvement we can think of, and then we get estimates on how much it's going to cost, when we need to replace it, and then we set aside money each year up until then so that we can pay cash for it and not get stuck having to go to voters and say we didn't plan well enough and now we need a new roof, and if you don't vote for the money we can't get a new roof. We don't do that here. We make sure that we have the money. So this right here, we passed our levy knowing that we needed money for the next 15 years at least, because like I said, we're going to try not to go back to the voters anytime soon. So this money will be set aside, and we know any day now, like 22 years old, we're going to have to replace this roof. It's going to be in the next couple of years that we're going to have to replace this roof, and it's going to be a big cost. But we have budgeted for it. We have planned for it. We have, in addition to our operating budget, we have two separate budgets. One is the permanent improvement budget, where all of that goes, and we have an automation budget, because we do the same thing to ensure that we always have money to update our computers, to make sure the infrastructure, the IT infrastructure, equipment like this to host meetings. The equipment here, this is a Zoom setup so that we are state of the art. So that's what's going on with the budget. You can see they don't quite match up, 6.6 to 6.9. We always make sure, well, this seems a little opposite of what I'm about to say, but for the most part, we're very conservative on the amount of money that we think we're going to get, and we tend to be a little more higher on our expenses so that we don't get caught overspending. And we always, every year that I've been here for 18 years, and prior to that, the library has never spent more in one year than they have taken in. So we try to be very, very responsible. Yes, Richard?
A little bit unclear on the transfer, so that's like an escrow fund?
Yeah, well, the transfers would go into these other, to the permanent improvement fund.
Okay.
So I don't know if you call it escrow
Can
necessarily.
you earn interest on that money?
Once it's in that account, no. When we get our big, so the tax money we get in two disbursements, one in the spring and then one later in the year. When we get that big check, the first thing we do is we take whatever amount we're going to take, and we can set that aside and invest in it. But once, I'd have to ask Janet for sure, but once it's in the permanent improvement fund, I don't think we invest those funds. Yes? Mm-hmm.
Is 3D printing a big expense or not?
No, it's not. Mainly because the materials aren't that expensive, but when patrons are 3D printing, they do pay for the cost of the materials. So there's not a huge cost to the library for that.
The equipment's expensive.
It's not terrible. Some of it is, like the CNC machine is a big expenditure outlay. The 3D printers themselves are not terribly expensive. Yeah. And some of that equipment is purchased through, we talk about grants, but donated money. From time to time we will get, and when we talk about our foundation, I'll skip ahead a little bit, our foundation has donated money to the library to help purchase some of that equipment. We had a woman last year who donated $10,000 to the library and allowed us to use some of that money to put towards the makerspace and buying equipment. So a lot of that equipment in there was actually purchased with donated dollars. So the story there is really, we try to be as mindful as possible about the dollars that we're given. We try to be responsible. We try to think ahead so that we never get caught having to go to voters and say, we need more money because we didn't plan well enough. And even though she's not here, I will give a shout out. Our fiscal officer, Jana Nasif, is amazing. She just does a fantastic job for us. So let's talk about what happened in 2024 that made us so amazing and wonderful. We celebrated 140 years. We have been around literally for 140 years. So for those of you who don't know, the library was founded in 1884 by this gentleman here, Leonard G. Porter. Prior to him founding the library, there was the Dover Literary Society, the group of leading citizens that got together, right, talked about important things. When Leonard Porter died without an heir, he left $1,000 in his collection of books, which can be, some of those books can be found in the quiet room towards the back of the library. We still have some of his books. It wasn't just him. Others, Dr. Lathrop, Reuben Hall, Samuel Lathrop, they also donated $1,000, $500. So there were donations that came in. And a library was formed in this white frame building that was not exactly on this site, but was just a couple doors down here on Center Ridge. And the library existed in that building from 1884 through 1950. With no professional librarian, it was mostly volunteers. For going back a little more history, this whole area from the lake down south past North Olmsted was called Dover Township. And there was a schism in 1903 and 1907 in which Bay Village schismed off one way and then North Olmsted schismed off the other way, leaving Dover Township in the middle. We were Dover Township. We briefly in the mid-50s became Westlake Village, and then in 1957, we officially became the city of Westlake. So a little bit of trivia, this library is named Porter Public Library, not Westlake Porter Public Library, because there was no Westlake when this library was founded. And in 1957, I'm guessing they thought it wasn't worth the paperwork to correct the name, right? So we are actually Porter Public Library. In 1950, the library moved to the building right down the street on the corner of Westwood and Center Ridge Road. It was an AT&T building before that, I believe. It expanded a couple times, and the library was housed there from 1950 to 1985. In 1985, a building was built on this site right here, much smaller, and in a sort of odd move, the building wasn't terribly large right about the time Westlake was exploding in population. So fast forward only 85 to 95, about 14 years later, in 1999, the library decided it needed to expand. So a campaign to do a renovation and expansion commenced, and from 99 through 2002, the library was housed down the street in what is now the Elks Lodge. From the front, it's Bella Capelli up top, and then underneath around back is the Elks Lodge, across from Gale's Greenhouse, next door to Mitchell's Tavern. That was the library for 3 years. And while this building was being built, this building opened in July of 2002, and so we've been here for 24 years. In that history of 140 years, there's just, like I said, a lot of history of us and our funding and how it's been tied. We are the second oldest library in Cuyahoga County. Cleveland Public claims they've been around longer, I mean, I guess. But it's close. But we're the second oldest library in Cuyahoga County. The Cuyahoga County Public Library wasn't formed until, I believe, like 40 years after Westlake was founded. So, and just to follow through on that thread and answer the question that may come up, over the years there have been questions about why or should Porter Library join the county library, and it's come very close a couple of times. And ultimately the community has said, we want to remain independent. You'd have to go through, it wouldn't be easy, you'd have to go through a bunch of hurdles and votes and different things to make that happen. But as I said early on, at this point, our millage is lower than Cuyahoga County's, so if we were to join county, there wouldn't be any financial incentive for the citizens of Westlake necessarily to do that. Throughout the course of the year, we celebrated in different ways, kind of culminating with this cookie bake-off, which was wildly successful. We had, I don't remember, it was a ridiculous number of people that brought in cookies, and I can assure you, as one of the judges, the cookies were excellent, but nobody should have to eat that many cookies in one sitting. But it was a really neat community event that brought out a lot of people sharing their baking skills, and there was a youth division and an adult division, and it was so cute. One of the young girls got there early and literally just hung around the judges' table, you know, like, have you judged yet? Have you judged yet? Have you judged yet? Have you judged yet? And she wound up, I think, getting second or third place. She did place. It was super cute. So we celebrated 140 years. The big news was some of the renovations. And I'm looking at the time doing it. I want to back up on this one a few years. In 2021, the Board of Trustees, who it is their charge to set the vision and future of the library. It's my job and my staff's job to carry out that vision that the board sets for us. They represent the community. They say, this is what we think the community wants, or they ask the community, what is it you want? So we hired an architect, Bialowski and Associates, to come into the library and do a space planning project. So we set up in the lobby for a week or two, and we put up billboards, and we asked patrons to write on boards and do different tasks to help us decide or let us know what they thought would be important for their library over the next 10 to 15 years. And there were several other activities around that. We took that information, worked with the architect, and developed a plan to say, these are your primary areas to focus on to make the library relevant for the next 10 to 15 years. So it resulted in 2 years ago having a construction project that year that resulted in the pavilion being built across the parking lot out here, an outdoor programming pavilion, to which that also marked the 50th anniversary of the Friends of the Library being founded, and the Friends of the Library donated $100,000 to help build that pavilion out there. And that pavilion, we're starting to see more and more use of it, not on days like today, but groups would love to meet out there. We'll set it up just like a meeting room so a group can meet out there. We can have performances where people are out in the lawn. There's a lot of flexible uses of that space, but that was identified as needing an outdoor programming space for the community. The other area is back in the back of the library where the old reference books used to be. There was a handful of tables back there for people to study. So we gussied that up a little bit and put in a much nicer space for people to, we added 2 larger study rooms. Those are in demand all of the time. Those will hold up to 6 people and they are booked regularly. So that was a huge win to get those in there. And we made that space look a little nicer. And we, there was another area of the library we touched. The makerspace. We had makerspace. And also across from it, the book nook is there. For 30 years, we had a gift store at the library called Portables, and the lady who ran that for 30 years just needed to step away, needed to step back, and we really didn't have any other volunteers that wanted to step up and run that. It's a pretty big undertaking. So what we did was we moved the used bookstore, the book nook, into that space, and it's also run by the Friends. It's an amazing, amazing space. So we did that, and then where the cafe used to be, another space that people really liked, but not enough to keep it in business. We could no longer sustain a cafe, so now we have the makerspace. And here's what I'll say about the makerspace and how libraries, this is really key to understanding the difference between what libraries were and what they're becoming and what they are. I always looked at it as libraries, most people kind of think about a library as a place to access information. You come in and you get a book and you open it and you access information. You watch a video, you access information, you listen and so forth. Or you attend a program, you access information. The makerspace is about you're creating that content based on content that you learned at the library. Now it's nothing new, because in the old days I think about it, well, libraries have always been about creating content. You used to walk into a library way back in the day and you'd go to the shelf and you would pick out a book on how to write a resume, and then you would go over to, yes, the typewriter, not the computer, because I'm old enough that we would do it on typewriters, and you would create content. The library could help you, literally help you with your resume on a typewriter. Now we can do the same thing on a computer, but people are creating content in the library and always have. This is just expanding that in a lot of different ways. So the makerspace has been, I've been stunned at how heavily used it is and the demographics. I expected it to be perhaps a lot of younger, like kids and 20, 30-year-olds. I mean, everybody is using this makerspace. I see, what is the old 0 to 99? I mean, people are in there using the makerspace for all kinds of stuff. So that was 2 years ago. And we hit the things that we thought were the biggest priorities. Then the board looked and said, well, what else was in that plan? What are our next set of priorities? And that's what this year was about. So this year, one of our priorities, and it's the least sexy because it's staff space and not public space, but it benefits the public tremendously. We needed a new circulation area because the way it was originally built, this wall, and it's hard to remember what something looked like just a couple weeks ago, right? Or months ago. There was a wall here, then there was a room back there with another wall, and then that's our drive-up window. What that meant, in order to staff this area, we had to have people at 3 different places in this department because you can't see back and forth through there. Now we can have a person at this desk that can see back to the window, which helps us staffing-wise to be more efficient. That was one of the big things that we needed to accomplish, was that. The other big thing, and there's not a picture of it on here necessarily, but hopefully you've seen it already, is right off this room right here, there's a big glass window so you can see your books, get put through a slot where they are checked in right then and there. So it's a labor-saving device for our staff because the machine is checking the books in. It's sorting the books into different categories, saving us the hassle of sorting the stuff. So by the time we get our hands on it out of a bin right here, those books are going onto a cart and out to the shelf. So your books are getting checked in faster, probably more accurately, even though our staff's pretty good at it, and they're getting back out to the shelf faster than ever. So that was a big thing for us, was to be more efficient in the circulation area. The teen lounge was an area that when this building was built and completed, it was beautiful from the get-go, highly functional, lots of great spaces. I kind of joke, when I interviewed for this job, the building had only open for a couple hours, and I was in that room right over there with the Board of Trustees, and one of them said, well, you've been here, 2 days now, and you've seen the building. What do you think of it, and what would you have done differently, or, what did we not get right? And I just looked at the interviewers and said, well, I wouldn't presume to think I could do better than you all did. Like, it was a trap question, big time. and like, you guys did a wonderful job. It's perfect. And the whole time I'm thinking, well, there's that young adult area. And then, and I got hired, so I must have answered right. But one thing that always bugged me was the young adult area was simply an alcove with the books in it and like one table. That was about it for our young adults. And if you know anything about young adults, they are sometimes rambunctious, they are full of energy, they like to move around, and they can cause a lot of excitement in the area they're in. Havoc is a good word. Right? Yeah, exactly. So what we wanted to do was create a space where they could go, where we could still see them, they could still be held accountable, they're not locked away where it's a free-for-all. But they can have their own space and kind of, they can stay away from us, we can stay away from them, and everybody's happy kind of situation. So that's what we were finally able to do, is give the teens their own space. We didn't lose a single book in the collection because kids actually still do read books. We're excited about that. But kids also, they're at school all day. They come over after school. Sometimes they like to unwind for a little bit so they can do a little bit of gaming with their friends. We can do activities in this space that, again, kind of contains the noise and the havoc a little bit. And it's been successful right out of the gate. The kids love this space. This is one that was, even though it fell as a second priority, or a second year priority in the space plan, from the day that I started here, I have always wanted to open the second floor to the public. This is an amazing space up here, and it was been on my list for a very, very long time. So what's up with the second floor? The second floor was designated when the building opened as staff space. And the reason is, those wooden doors that you've probably seen, they lead to an area where our staff room is. There's not much back there. Staff room and a stairwell back to the first floor. And then there's not a lot up here. And then the administrative offices. And other than that, the staff used the room over there in this room for board meetings, for staff meetings, but a lot of times they just weren't in use at all. And if you go all the way back to the beginning of my presentation, you'll remember how I talked about how busy the meeting room usage is. The only solution to that is we need more meeting rooms. So by opening the second floor to the public, we accomplished one of the most primary goals, and that was to add 2 more meeting rooms into the mix. And like today, we're able to meet in this room today, whereas before we wouldn't have had this room, and I don't know what the schedule is today, but on a typical Sunday, every other room downstairs is going to be booked. So we've got all this extra space. The other thing is just people need spaces to sit and study and so forth. This right out here is literally now the best view in the library. If you're sitting along that countertop or the chairs, it literally is the best view in the library, especially when it's snowing. On a day where come up here when it's snowing and look out that window, it's fabulous. It's fantastic. So more seating was the second reason that we opened the second floor. The third reason is this. As the library director for almost 18 years, I was on the second floor behind locked doors, tucked away back here in my office, while my staff is on the first floor. When anybody from the public can walk in and ask them questions, talk to them, they're very accessible. The library director is tucked away, locked behind a door. That didn't seem right to me. And I felt like if anybody from the public wanted to say, hey, I got questions about my public library, and I want to see the library director, they shouldn't have to go through levels of security to get upstairs and talk to the library director. So for all of those reasons, we felt that it was important to open the second floor, and it has been another hit. People have loved it. If you're glancing out, you can see tons of people are coming up here. They're sitting there just looking around. It's a super nice space.
When did you do that?
I'm sorry?
When did you open?
This just opened a month ago, in January. Yep. So it was part of the second phase. And then we addressed the issue of not having a coffee cafe. One of the best lines I've ever heard since I've been here is when we didn't reopen the cafe, and several patrons were making note of that very grumpily, like, oh, you need a cafe, where's the cafe? And one of the volunteers inappropriately said to the patron, well, if everybody who said how much they loved the cafe went in there and bought a cup of coffee, we'd probably still have a cafe. We're like, okay, yeah, that might be true, but that's, we don't talk to our patrons that way. But the fact is that I think it was true. It was one of those things that library patrons as a whole thought how awesome that we have a cafe in our library as they walked right by it, did buy a cup of coffee. Right? You got to sell a lot of coffee to keep something like that in business. And when you don't open until 9 a.m. and people have had, anyway. And we didn't really like being a landlord to an independent company. So what we changed that by adding a coffee machine, drink machine, snack machine. That, going back 20 years ago, food was not allowed in the library, just like talking, right? We're a terrible, horrible place, no fun. But we have eased up on that. We do allow drinks with lids and small dry snacks and things. So now people can get these from the vending, and Speedway has seen their sales go down by 25%. So. Actually, not all the kids. See, the kids won't stop at this because they don't sell squishies that are this tall, and they don't sell the family-sized bag of chips. But so adding that has been a nice way to provide, because there are people who will come into the library and they'll be here all day for whatever reason. They're kind of working from home or they're studying, whatever the case may be. So this has been a nice way to address that issue.
Where's the other room, other picture?
I'm sorry?
What's the other picture?
The other picture.
Go back to the...
Yep.
Yeah.
That one?
No, go back. Okay. What is this machine?
Oh, so this is just showing the construction.
Oh, okay.
So this was, this cabinet here went the length of the wall, and it was just carpet. I'm trying to think, I think there was an extra table over there. So this is just showing what the construction looked like. And for our first art exhibit on the second floor, if you walk around the mezzanine, you'll see a bunch of pictures of the construction process. So that was huge for us last year to bring those renovations to the library. It did not complete our space plan, but when you add up what we did the year before and then last year, 23 and 24, we've accomplished pretty much the big goals that came out of that space plan. What we heard from the public, how they wanted to use the space. Between those two projects, we probably touched 70% of the library, which means that we're updated pretty well for the next foreseeable future. The board will be having a retreat this spring to talk about, they'll go back, they'll review that plan and say, was there anything in that plan that we didn't do? And if so, is it still relevant? Should we do it? Should we not do it? Now that we're 4 years out from that plan, have other things revealed themselves that we should be thinking about? But for all intents and purposes, the fiscal officer and myself have said we're not doing any more construction in 2025. We are constructioned out, so there won't be any more upheaval or disruption for a while. But the board will take a look. And just as a thought, the one area for sure that was in that plan that we discussed, and we'll have to really think long and hard about whether we want to do or not, is creating a distinct and special local history room. So we have a local history collection here. You wouldn't necessarily know it, it's all the way in the back, but we have the potential to take some space and turn it to almost like a reading room, a local history reading room. That would be the next or the last big project that was not done as part of the space plan. So the board will look that over and decide whether or not we think that's something that we need. And we would want to work with the Historical Society and people in Westlake to see is that something that we really do need. In 2024, we did stuff beyond the walls as well. Some big things for us was the eclipse. Like, it's hard to remember because that was so long ago, but that was a big deal for us. And it wound up not being as big of a deal as we thought. Leading up to the eclipse, we thought that everything in the city was going to shut down and that you wouldn't be able to drive around for hours and hours and hours. The crowds didn't materialize like everybody was afraid of in terms of choking off the streets and so forth. But we did have 250 people show up to the library for an eclipse watch party. They chose to come to the library. But we were also able, and I think this was through some grant money and really deeply discounted connections that we have, we were able to provide 3,600 glasses to the community so that people could watch the eclipse safely. We were worried that all 3,600 of them were going to come to the library, but that didn't happen. It's kind of hard, if you watch the eclipse and you thought, yeah, that was really cool, but it didn't turn out to be, you have to remember that Bay Village, actually, the Bay Village Library closed that day. Bay Village closed almost everything in advance. They just said, we're so worried about the throngs coming in, we're just shutting everything down. And there were a lot of libraries that did that preemptively. We chose to stay open. We figured we could weather the storm, and we did, and it was fantastic. We had a really nice crowd. So the eclipse was a lot of energy and a lot of good return on it. And when you think about the celestial happenings that go on in the worldly stuff, the other big thing for us was the storm that happened in August. This was a tremendous moment for us. It was and I don't mean to, I'm not celebrating it because of the hardship that people went through, but I am celebrating the fact that we were here at that moment. And this harkens back to, this is a tradition here. If you go way back to, I think it was 2012, was that Superstorm Sandy? Superstorm Sandy was 2012, which was similar, only in many respects, this one was even more so than Superstorm Sandy. The two things in common there was the library did not lose power, so we were able to not just be open to the public, but we immediately said, let's stay open later. And I have such an amazing board of trustees that they are all in for this kind of stuff. We normally close at 9. I called our board president, Will, who's here today, and said, hey, Will, can we stay open until 11? He's like, yeah, I think we should. Boom, we're open until 11 o'clock. People had a device. They had a device. In this event, people were showing up with 4 and 5 devices. They had 2 phones, their iPad, their laptop, one guy came in with this big thing of batteries. I didn't even know what it was. He's like, where can I plug this in? I'm like, what is that? We just saw some really crazy stuff. And every outlet that was available, I mean, people were just packed in. It was amazing. And everybody treated everybody else with respect and grace, given how I'm sure people were probably pretty testy and so forth. And our staff bent over backwards to make everybody feel welcome and comfortable. In addition, we had people from the community, so that first night would have been Wednesday night, I believe it was.
Pizza by Robert?
Pizza by Robert, yeah, Pizza by Robert called us up and said, hey, we've got 15 pizzas we'd like to deliver. And at the time I'm thinking, 15 pizzas? That's a lot of pizza. And they brought it over and we put it out on this table here, spread out 15 pizzas and made an announcement. This crowd of people came and stripped the table like locusts and were like, and they disappeared. We're like, oh my gosh, those pizzas are gone. What happened was they had all this dough and then their power went out. But somehow or another, they were able to still, like their ovens or gas ovens maybe is what it was. So they made up all the pizzas. Well, they couldn't make pizza anymore, but the next day, and they're the new, Rob Kess had sold it to these new owners, and they're trying to get out of the community. They put together, I believe it was 150 sack lunches, made peanut butter sandwiches and got some chips, and the next day they brought them up and said, hey, pass these out to your customers. There was a church that, I want to say it was the RLDS, I should know that, Seventh-day Adventists, I think it was. They showed up with just tubs of snacks. Hand these out. Other groups brought up things. In the meantime, we put out the call and we got food trucks to come in for people to have food. It was just an amazing show of community spirit and the fact that we were able to do that. And I think that part of that is what's nice about being a small independent library is that we can make those decisions on the spot and it affects our building. We're not worried about 27 other branches and what they're doing and so forth. We were able to stay open and serve this community. And it was, I'm glad we were able to be here. So it's our tradition. We did it in 12 and we did it, and I hope that we never have to do it again. But that was big for us. Other areas that we've been in the community, this year, and Heather is very proud of this, we won first place in Westlake and Bloom in our category, which I think our category is churches and other organizations is our category. The year before, we'd come in third, and when I went up to get our little prize for being in third place, Council President Dave Greenspan was in the back room texting me, if you ain't first, you're last. And I'm like, so the next year, we came in first, and Heather's very proud of that. We also participate in the Scarecrow contest. We're always in the both parades in Westlake. We do trunk or treat up at the schools. Just all of the different ways that we get out into the community, because the library isn't just in this building. Whether we're at Farmers Market, Crocker Park, we go to the schools. We have an outreach program. When that school is built next door, there's a sidewalk between us and the building. Every week during the school years, teachers walk their kids over to take tours of the library, to have story times. We have a program called the Porter Express, where we will deliver and pick up library materials to any school in Westlake, Bernadette, St. Paul, Westlake School District, to make it easy for teachers to get the materials and not, they taught all day and now they don't want to go to the library and pick stuff up. So we are in the community in a million different ways, going beyond our walls.
Why don't we do a farmer's market here?
We do
City Fresh?
City Fresh. I mean, it's not quite the same thing, but City Fresh uses this as a location for people to come pick up their co-op food.
Okay.
So we do stuff like that. This isn't necessarily a 2024 or 25 thing. This is an ongoing thing, but just another example of what's big for us here at the library. And I start with our Friends group. We have an amazing Friends group. They have now been around for 52 years, I guess. They are a group of mostly women, but a handful of dudes that work very, very hard with their volunteer time to raise money for the library. They run the Book Nook. They run the annual book sale. They put on programs throughout the year. They are amazing. So these are just some pictures of them in doing some programming in their pavilion that they helped build for us. You can see all these people out here in the lawn. The Friends will typically donate, so they raise all this money. They give it back to the library to the tune of about $35,000 to $40,000 each year. And what the library primarily does with that money is we fund the programs that you would attend here. So summer reading program, whether adult or children, all of that's paid for with Friends dollars. They pay for programming throughout the year. So if we need to hire a speaker to come in and do a program, chances are that's paid for by the Friends of the library. The Friends, they will also make specific donations if we have a project going on. They help fund things like the little garden that's in the front of the library. Back in the day, they helped with the reading garden in the back. The pavilion, our library vans are purchased by the Friends of the library. They do an amazing amount for us. So we're very grateful to our Friends and all they do. They're always looking for more volunteers, and including board positions. Same with the there's more. This past year, the Friends, they forgot to ask. They just told us that they were bringing live reindeer to the library. And we're like, okay, I guess. And the reindeer showed up. Everybody had a good time. Nobody was bit or kicked. And it went fabulously. And just some more shots of, Supergirl reading to kids out here. Is it Chomp or Chomps? Is that it?
Yeah,
Chomps. Yeah. I just haven't caught on to some of the sports teams in this town that haven't won a title in a while. Sorry,
Cinderella was there that day too.
I'm just trying to think when the Royals won the World. Oh yeah, 2015. That's right.
That's why
Anyway,
Kansas City will lose tonight.
oh, you can hope all you want, but I can't tell you. Okay, the foundation, and we have members of the foundation with us today as well. So the foundation was formed back in the 80s, and with some of the legends of librarydom, Myrna Chelko, Dale Laporte, and others got the foundation started, and it had a pretty big influx at the time, like $50,000, $60,000 back in 1985 or so, and then it just sort of lingered there for a long, long time. And we've worked very, very hard to revitalize the foundation. Because we realize that to continue to fund some of the programming and some of the things that we do that helps us not have to raise our millage with the money they get, we want the foundation to build up to be generating enough money to supplement a lot of the things that we do. And right now the foundation is sitting at about, I believe, I'm rounding off a little bit, $185,000. We're hopeful to get to $250,000 in the next 4 years. Which would be a nice benchmark. That amount of money in the foundation would generate the kind of interest that would help fund some of the things that we're doing. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that means in a minute. But one of the big things that they do for visibility and raise a little money is part of one of my next slides. But this is out in the reading garden. This is a beer and wine garden that's here at the library to support the art festival. And some of the people in the slides, you may recognize them from you're right out here. Richard and who else do we got here? There's Peter there, right? Lauren, and but our board and Friends board and foundation board, they are always here to help out. The annual art festival is not Friends or Foundation, but the foundation does use that, again, as part of the beer and wine garden. It's both a fundraiser and an awareness issue. But the annual art festival is this year will be the 5th annual. It's become a big deal for us. And that came about because when the school was built next door and we put the sidewalk in, we know that's for the students. But what else could we do with that sidewalk? And the Westlake Bay Village Rotary Club said, Joe Kraft, who's an amazing, amazing Westlake resident and philanthropist, just an amazing guy. He's in my Rotary Club, and we got to talking, and we went up to Huron to see their Rotary Club's art festival. We came back and said, we can do that. And we've been throwing an art festival for 4 years. This will be our 5th, where we'll probably have about 80 artist booths this year for a one-day event that will bring about 2,000 people to the library for that art festival. It's just an amazing event. It keeps growing every year, but it allows us to partner with the city, it allows us to partner with the schools, and many other people.
Just a little
Yeah.
interjection on that. Man, you could get so many more artisans if you did it a 2-day event rather than a 1-day.
We discuss that all the time. You know, we want to start small and kind of build. And what artists tell us is this is one of their favorite festivals because of how much work the Rotary Club does to make it a special event for the artists. And what I've learned, artist code for making money is we had a good day. You know, we had a good day. Like, oh, okay, right? And all of our artists, we get so many repeat people that come to our festival. So let's look ahead. What are we looking at this year? One, we really have a new strategic plan that we are putting into effect starting really this year. We've been working on it most of 2024. Our 3 goals, when you think about all the construction we did, we don't really have a whole lot of goals around the building because we've been working on the building for the past couple of years. So when we think about what are we going to focus on for this year and the next couple of years, first and foremost is to elevate our partnerships and our outreach services. We have really great partners here at the library. Connecting for Kids is our most key strategic partner. Connecting for Kids is an organization that assists families that have a concern about their child's development. And they've been around for about 12 or 13 years, and they were started right here in this library. A nonprofit with Sarah Rentamaki and a few of her friends, no budget, just kind of meet in a library room. Now they're a $300,000 plus a year nonprofit that has served 20,000 families from Solon to Elyria, with most of their programs being housed at libraries all over Northeast Ohio. And they have truly, truly made a difference in thousands of lives, helping parents work with their children that have a disability of some type. It's been amazing. That's for on the children end of the spectrum. We are really now just ramping up our partnership with the Carolyn L. Farrell Foundation, also based here in Westlake, and their mission is the other side, which is to assist families, individuals experiencing Alzheimer's, brain health related issues. They're in Westlake up on Detroit Road across from the Marks, but we are going to be relying on them this year to do some programming around aging, Alzheimer's, dementia here at the library, training for our staff, training for the public. But there are so many other partnerships that we have. We love to partner with groups, and this year will be about looking at about who we partner with, who are we not partnering with, and building that out. Because our librarians, and we do have subject specialty librarians, but for the most part, they have a degree in being a librarian. We want to bring people in to do our programs that have expertise, and we do that through our partnerships. And then it also helps those organizations as well. I mentioned, I think a little bit earlier, that our citizenship classes are now back at the library, just really starting at the beginning of the year. That's the Aspire program, still attached to Tri-C, but that's a very key partnership for us. And we've really started doing a lot more with the Cleveland Civil War Roundtable. And one of the programs that's going to be here at the library we're very excited about is the preeminent portrayer of U.S. and President Grant, who is out of Memphis. Kurt Fields is his name, Dr. Kurt Fields, will be coming to Northeast Ohio for a full week's worth of programming that kicks off here at Porter Library on that Monday night in May, first Monday night in May, I think it's the 5th. And then General Grant will go to the Lorraine Public Library. He'll go to the Cleveland Historical Society. He's going to finish up his week out in Fremont at the the Hayes Music, right? He'll be out there, and then during the day, he's going to be going to different schools, including Westlake School. He'll be making a presentation there. So in partnership, the library partnering with the Civil War Roundtable, we're able to bring in this kind of programming that we're very excited about. And we're going to be looking for who else we can partner with. Who out there are we not working with that we should be working with? Let me back up just a minute, just to kind of cover. The other thing is we're going to spend this year doing a lot of continuous assessment evaluation around 2 areas specifically. If you remember, just about an hour or 3 hours ago when I first started, I was talking about the budget and those materials. We're going to look really, really hard at assessing and evaluating and making sure we're doing the right things with our materials. Are we buying the right stuff? Are we being efficient about it? But also our programming. Are we offering the right programs? A couple years ago that was full and had a giant waiting list. I'm like, and we haven't reproduced that program again. Why? Like, there's certain programs that you need to do over and over again. I want to point out along these lines, it's because I was just talking to my friend Isam a minute ago, some of the programs and partnerships that we do. It was just this past Saturday, not a week ago. We celebrated World Hijab Day here, and we had almost 60 people show up to that program, which was a partnership with folks in the community to bring in some programming that meets our mission statement to be inclusive in an ever-changing world. So those are the kinds of things that we want to continue to do, partner with anybody and everybody to bring new and exciting experiences and learning to the community. And the last one is more an internal goal. It's to champion staff growth and success. We believe that we have the best staff of any library that you'll ever walk into. The staff here is amazing. And if I had a nickel for every time I heard the name Frances, everybody here knows who I'm talking about. Frances is a part-time employee who garners hundreds of compliments every year. She is just amazing. But the fact is, the rest of our staff are pretty darn good too. And they do an amazing job. We don't ever want to lose sight of that. The minute you take that for granted is the minute that you're not great anymore. So we want to make sure that we're always championing our staff growth and success. Going back to the foundation, we're very excited. We're going to have an event this year on Friday, June 6th, and it's going to be an after-hours gala. So you will be able to come up to the library after hours. The library will be closed, and we're going to have a gala benefit where we will have dinner, we'll have drinks. We will have beer and wine available for that evening. It's a kind of a traditional gala in the sense that we will have raffle items and things of that nature. Probably somewhat of an abbreviated version of this where we will let folks know what's happening in their public library. Just a very quick overview of that and highlighting the foundation and friends and how important they are to what we do and that the money that they raise benefits the library. So this is a save the date. We're very excited about the opportunity. Years ago, we had a thing called Party at Porter with our friends. The Friends group did it. It was a lovely event, but it wasn't really on the scale of what we're thinking here.
Would that be outside?
No, it'll probably be inside because we want it to be bigger than that can handle out there. Yeah. And our theme is very important. I believe in libraries. So, public libraries are about information. They are about democracy. They are very, very important to our society. And we believe that people who use public libraries believe in public libraries. And so this would be an opportunity to really help us celebrate our mission and continue to serve the public. This is something that happens every year, but we really want to encourage people to engage in the Summer Reading Challenge because reading is our business. It's what we do. The Summer Reading Challenge is not just for kids. We have an adult program as well. We encourage people of all ages to sign up and participate in our summer reading. Our makerspace, what's going to be new for our makerspace is the Friends have paid for this lovely thing here. This is a teaching kitchen. So some of our programs will be able to be culinary programs where these things flip up so you can have, there's more arms over here and here. So students can be around here. It comes with a curriculum. There's an oven on the side, hot plate there. So we will do, that's been going on in libraries for a while now, the ability to do culinary programming. And this will be the newest addition to our makerspace, which is a laser engraver for people who want to do that kind of thing.
Do we have room for that kitchen?
This right here, if it were in this room, it would take up about this much space, so I could have it right here and do a cooking program in this room with this setup right here. And if you had a smaller group, and like I said, you just want to have 4 or 5 kids that are sitting around it on stools, you could do that too, however you want to do it. But, yeah.
Just a quick comment to bring out with having run cafes and bookstores forever. We have to make sure we have some people present who are ServSafe certified, so we don't have to deal with the health department if we're doing something like that.
Yeah.
Because they'll be all over us.
Oh, never mind. I was gonna.
I'll talk to you about that
Yeah,
later.
yeah. This has been a growing trend in libraries for a while to do the culinary programs. You know, we don't have the space to build and I don't think it's necessarily appropriate for us to have like this room being a kitchen. Lorraine Public Library has a beautiful, amazing teaching kitchen space. They were able to appropriate some space, and if you get a chance to see that, it's fantastic. And they do that, so we don't necessarily, that's the other thing, is, you want to be mindful of what other libraries are doing. You don't want to replicate necessarily, you want to be unique and differentiate. I've been talking for quite a while, and you all have been asking some good questions along the way, but at this point in time, I would wrap up by saying that's what we did, that's what we're going to be doing. And hopefully you're enjoying your public library, but is there any questions that you have that I can answer?
First of all, how old is this picture?
That was taken last week.
I think it was last year.
Now, could you give us an idea about the Board of Trustees? You're not going to have names, but just give me about how many, you said 7? And what their background, their experience, how long do they serve, and how do they move and get new members?
Okay. So first of all, I'd like to thank my trustees for being here. We have Will Perry up front. We have Lauren Golick. We have Bob Plants, Peter Schindler, and Tindy Kruka. That 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5. Jason Nolde and Elizabeth Sheehy, who aren't here today. So we have 7 trustees. The library is what's called we're a school district library, meaning we are not our own taxing authority. The school district is our taxing authority. So when we want to go on the ballot, it's the school district that has to put us on the ballot. That's the one thing they do, one of 2 things they do for us. The second thing they do for us is they appoint our trustees. Now, what that means is we can have any process in the world that we want, but ultimately the school district says yay or nay. So the way it works here, and it could be different in another library, the library advertises and recruits for people who want to be on the board. The board has a subcommittee. They interview everybody. If somebody applies, we make sure to interview everybody who applies. From there, the Board of Trustees will come up with a recommendation, and they will send that recommendation to the school board, and the school board can either accept it or reject it. If the school board accepts it, they go on to the board. The board is a 7-year term, and you can be reappointed to the board for another term, if you want. So it can be longer than 7 years. As far as the experience, one of the most obvious questions that we get is, do you have to live in Westlake? And the answer is no. By statute, you do not. Over the years, we have had people. It's been a long time since we've added somebody to the board who was not from Westlake, but we have had people join the board when they lived in Westlake and then maybe move to a neighboring community, so they don't live in Westlake anymore. And that's legal. That's fine. And it's not the worst thing in the world. And again, the reason that's allowed is because of the state money we get, right? So if you live in North Olmsted, you are paying taxes to this library, so therefore you should be eligible to be on the board. That's about the only requirement. The board will take a look and say, well, is there any special expertise that we feel like we want on the board? Thank you for coming. And there will be some discussion around that, but we don't really have any designated slots like we must have an attorney, we must have a finance. It's really more, I think what the board looks for is people that have a passion about the library, right? They have passion about the library, they're invested in their community, they are able to help gather it, because a big part of what the trustees do is listening to the community. They need to be able to hear from the community and bring that in, represent the community. So it's a little nebulous, I guess, is what you'd say, but that's how we've done it over the years.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What else? Yes.
Should I ask this in the revenue? you know, with the, I know there's no federal money, but with all of the cutbacks that are going through and budget cuts, is there anything that will affect the 20% state money that you're getting right now? Or that you foresee possibly?
Well, the thing that we've been on high alert about for a couple of years is that the legislature has, and it's no secret, they've been very open about, they would like to do away with a lot of the taxes, sale, or what is it? I was gonna say property tax. It's not property tax. It's local income tax is what they'd like to get rid of. And if they did that, right, that would eliminate a huge part of the state budget, which obviously would impact us. When we ask them how that's going to work, the answer is, well, the revenue would come from other places, and the libraries will be fine. Like there's no hard and fast contract. So we're worried about that all the time. If they start cutting taxes, it would impact our budget without a doubt, unless they hold us harmless, and then all of a sudden it gets very complicated very quickly about, well, where would that money come from and so forth. But that is something that we pay attention to very closely. It's the only scenario in which it's better for us than other libraries because it is only 20% of our budget versus some libraries, if they only have state funding, or if they are 75% state and only 25% local levy, if the state they're going to get hurt a lot worse than we are. So yeah, it's something we're worried about, but we go, we stay in touch with our legislators and we let them know, and we've been told over and over again that they understand how important libraries are and they'll continue to fund libraries. Yeah, but it is absolutely something we stay concerned about. Anything else? Well, if not, I surely do appreciate y'all coming out on a Sunday afternoon. I mean, with the weather, it's probably as good in here as it is anywhere else, right? But I do appreciate you. My name's Andrew. I mentioned that. I'm the only Andrew in the library, so the easiest way to get a hold of me is you can call or walk into the library and say, I want to talk to Andrew. And all they do is they call me and they say, there's somebody who wants to talk to you, and then I come running as fast as I can to come down and say hi and chat with you about anything that you want to chat with. Pretty easy to get a hold of, and if you have any thoughts, questions, comments, or concerns, I hope you let me know.
Awesome.
Thank you.